Coming up this week on the Digital Lifestyle Show, Gary's back, and we're joined by old friend of the show, Richard Hay, talking about his time at Microsoft, leaving Microsoft, some of the technologies into now, and a whole range of technologies. Just to let you know as well, we've got some really good guests coming up on the next few weeks on the show. We'll be talking to Ollie Freak, the author of this Synth Evolutions book. We'll be talking about that. We're going to be talking Microsoft Surfaces with some Microsoft Surface MVPs. We're going to be talking Windows MIDI 2.0 and lots more, all in future shows. And our synth collector show is doing really well. So if you've got a synth collection you want to come on the show, let me know, ian@digital-lifestyle.com. Right, let's get to Gary. Gary, welcome back.
Always good to be here.
Yeah, we had a couple of weeks where we did different things, a couple of synth chat interviews, which
were excellent. I have to say, I've thoroughly enjoyed listening to the last two.
Yeah, I quite enjoyed doing those, and we've got a few more of them coming up over the next few months as well. But we are mixing it with other topics as well. We're going to be talking Surfaces. We're going to be talking Windows. We're going to be talking MIDI 2.0 and other stuff as well. So we've got lots of different topics coming up. But this week we've got our old friend Richard Hay is going to be joining us. So Richard, we've talked many times over the years, blogger and social media, talking about Windows. He then joined Microsoft, and we talked to him when he was at Microsoft and since left Microsoft. So I thought we'd catch up with him as well.
Always lovely to chat to Richard.
Yeah. It is. Just before we dive off to Richard, a couple of things you've been working on. I think we wanted to mention one of the little projects you're on.
So I kind of mentioned this last week, but this last time I was on, not last week, which is a while ago actually now.
Yeah.
This is an M5 stack ESP386 device, Atom S3. It's the Atom Lite S3 device, and what this is currently doing is detecting the fact that I'm in the room. It's looking for Bluetooth tags. So this little Bluetooth tag I've got on my keyring, I'll probably show that just about. It's been detected by this, and it's saying, "Oh, Gary's in the room," and therefore lights on, put the blinds in the right positions, don't arm the alarm, don't start sending off warnings. And it's using a piece of software called ESP Presence, which is actually designed for Home Assistant, which is one of the smart home things. And if you've got Home Assistants, it's really easy to set this up. There's instructions on it, and you can just plug it in quite easy to Home Assistant to actually put one of these in each room to say, as someone walks between rooms, you can see which room they're in, just by the presence of maybe their phone, or I mean, if you've got an iPhone, you can log that in, so it actually gets it. You can put software on your Samsung, on your Android phones to get it to talk to it. And it basically looking for something, so it's Bluetooth LE type things. It works with some watches. Works with Samsung watches. It doesn't work with my watch, but that's something which may change. But it works with virtually all sort of tracker tags, and this is a remarkably cheap tracker. It's about £3 off Amazon, so it's got a long battery life on it. So, and it just works, and it's really cool because I can adjust the range on it, so I can literally say how far away from it I want it to be able to detect on presence, and it's constantly sending presence messages. Now, obviously, I haven't got a Home Assistant. I use SmartThings, and it's a little bit more challenging to get this integrated into SmartThings. So one of the things you can do though is it sends out MQTT messages. We've talked about MQTT on the show before, and I've got a Mosquito, which is an MQTT broker running on one of my devices. So I pointed this at that broker, so now I'm intercepting those messages, and I can actually then get SmartThings to subscribe those messages. So I've got a numeric control on SmartThings, which is subscribing to the message from this device, looking for the distance. So at the moment, it's only sending for one Bluetooth device. So it sees one Bluetooth device, it sends an MQTT message out to that broker and says it's 8 meters away, it's 2 meters away, it's 1 meter away. And now, as I'm effectively 3 meters from my door here, so if it's beyond 3 meters, then I'm outside the building. And it works out on that basis, and it works extremely well actually. And then I can bring that into routines. I can put it on Alexa, so it's quite useful if I'm heading back into the house. It lets people in the house know I'm coming back in. So yeah, so it's quite a useful bit technology,
Yeah.
and incredibly cheap, less than a tenner for that. So
Yeah, that's really interesting. That, yeah.
And I'm thinking about putting some of these on the outside walls, because you could do this with a solar panel, because I take very little juice and have it detect as you walk around outside. But because it's so cheap, you can very easily have one in every room, and then be able to track which room people are in, and get sort of real time tracking that way. I'm debating whether I should tag the kids. What do you think they'll go for?
I don't see why not. That's quite a good idea. You can have an alarm sent to if the kids get into your office and you're not in the office, then you can send you a message saying they're not supposed to be in there. Yeah, it's actually a good idea. I like the idea of that. And if you can get it down to quite granular, so you actually know which room they're in. Because I was thinking it must be quite difficult not for them to overlap, because if you've got a plasterboard wall, how does it know you're on which side of this plasterboard wall you're on? But I suppose that's by having the combinations you can learn.
You triangulate, so you have multiples, and you work out the distances, so you can do it. And you can do with if you've got a Home Assistant, which is probably the most common smart home platform nowadays, there is plugins for that which allow you to do all that mapping of your house to make sure you know exactly where your beacons are. So yeah, it works really well.
Yeah, well, that's a nice little project, that. Definitely want to keep an eye on that. So just a couple of bits from me to mention. I've done a few videos over the last couple of weeks. So last week I released a Genesis set for the Korg Wave State, one I've been working on for some time, and that's proving quite popular. So that's performances for the Wave State that are all Genesis flavored, Tony Banks flavored. I've also posted a Secrets of the Mod Wave video. So this is really where I've sort of collated together some of the things that I found quite difficult to understand at first. And then once you get your head around it, it's that's actually quite simple but very powerful. So I've created a set of videos of those. So part one is up of those, and I've just published this week as a soundscape set for the Korg Wave State as well, which is also proving very popular as well. So those downloads are going well on that, so that was really nice to see. And the other good news is I've actually finished recording all the tracks for my new album. So I've recorded 14 tracks, going to whittle it down to probably 12, and that will be released in the next few weeks. So I'm just finishing off the mastering process on those, so that'll be all done as well. And I've actually come up with the concept for the next one as well, which is quite interesting. I've wanted to do a concept album for some time, never came up with a concept. I've got an idea, so I'm gonna work on that one. So something a bit different as well.
I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah, I'm also in the middle of doing a load of sampling as well. So the Korg Radius, Korg Karma, which is behind me there, I've started sampling that as well. So I'm going to do some samples on there. And next week there will be the final set of Roland D110 samples for the waves for the Mod Wave next week as well. Wave State coming slightly later as well. So I've quite enjoyed doing this sampling process, and actually documented how to do it as well, because it was one of those things where I had to sort of figure out how to put all those bits together. So I thought, if I've got to figure it out, then somebody must find it interesting. So I've recorded videos of that as well. So yeah, it's been quite busy. So the album will be a few weeks time now. Just finish off the bits and pieces on that, and that'll be done. So I don't know whether I should do I think I'll record a video for at least one of the tracks as well, which is not the easiest thing to do actually. How do you make a video for a song or a track that you recorded here? So I'll probably just do a short performance one or something like that, but just to go with it. So yeah,
maybe get AI to produce you a video.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, there's so much stuff like that you can do now, isn't there? With that,
yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of things on there. Right, so we better go straight to Richard's. just give us a plug for where we can find your EV Owners channel before we go to that.
Yeah, but it's on YouTube. It's the EV Owner channel on YouTube. And as I think I mentioned before, my last video was a family road trip in an ID Buzz, and it was great fun.
Excellent. Right, well, let's get to Richard, and we'll see you next week.
Okay.
Richard, welcome back to the show.
Thanks.
It's been a few years since you joined us. You've been on the show a few times in different guises as a fellow enthusiast and MVP, but also working at Microsoft as well. So I wanted to do this show is to catch up with you, find out what you're up to. We'll chat about some of the Microsoft stuff as well. I know there's a bit of build stuff that we can catch up on as well, but I also want to find out what other tech things you're currently doing. So first of all, welcome back, and it's very nice to catch up with you again.
No, very much so. I'd forgotten that we had gotten together while I was still working for Microsoft. So I officially retired from Microsoft on July 1st, wrapped up my 2.5-year stint with them, and it was a great experience. I loved working there. I loved the team I was on. As I recall, we were saying that when I was at Microsoft, I came on and I gave you guys a demo of Microsoft Q&A Assist, the early stage AI assistant that goes with Microsoft Q&A. And so, there was a part of me that really wanted to stick around. I loved the job. I loved the environment. I loved the team. But it was time for me also to move on to other things as well. So I've been enjoying that. You turn out is when you retire, like don't have any job, you find out there's a whole lot of things you can be doing. And that's kind of what's been happening for me over the last 3 months. But it's been good. It really has.
Yeah, so I suppose you've been a busy guy all your life. So I suppose was it a bit of a culture shock then, just like stopping, or have you just completely filled it now?
It was complete culture shock because, as I said to somebody else just recently, 40 years of having a job, right? And then suddenly I don't have a job. I mean, don't get me wrong. And I think many of your followers and my followers will know I was ordained to the diaconate in the Catholic Church a couple of years ago. And so I have plenty to do in that realm. It's not a job per se. I don't get paid for that. We deacons are volunteers. So it's a volunteer. It's a discernment. We're ordained, holy orders and all that. But it's not a paid position unless you're employed by the church in some other role. And so it isn't a job, but it is my job. It's what I do now. It's part of the reason that drove my leaving Microsoft was to get more into that. So, but it is weird to suddenly not have an obligation, to check in a clock. We weren't time clock guys, but to be responsible, to be around for meetings, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that was really a culture shock to suddenly be without all that. And I took some downtime because it had been a very busy 2.5 years with Microsoft on that team. We were iterating a lot. I was busy social media wise, working with the community and things of that nature. And just before I left, they made the big announcement that Microsoft Answers and Microsoft Q&A were going to merge next year. So I was in on the early stages of doing some of that work with that team. And in fact, that team's social lead took over my role, took over my responsibilities to the community, because they'll eventually become part of the overall community. So there's a lot happening at Microsoft. I watch the headlines now like everybody. So I'm seeing all the big AI and Copilot stuff. The big announcement this week with all these new tools that are available, but just the general AI kind of approach that Microsoft has taken. I think this week they did like a profile of multiple teams inside of Microsoft that are using Copilot and how they're using it and how they're saving time and money with it. So it's a dynamic environment.
Before you were at Microsoft, you were blogging and social media and from the outside talking about Windows and Microsoft technologies.
Correct.
And then you go on the inside. How did you find that transition from external to internal?
No doubt. I was an MVP for 12 years before I got hired by Microsoft. And of course, one of the things you have to do when you enter Microsoft as an employee, you resign your MVP. So I had to step down from both the Windows Insider MVP program, which now is been dissolved anyway, and the regular MVP program. So there was that change. And we get a lot of great access, MVPs, with Summit and team interactions and product group interactions. We get a lot of insight, but it never scratched the surface to what really goes in and on behind products and stuff behind the scenes. And I thought I understood it, but it wasn't until I was inside of Microsoft watching the team dynamics, watching the development of things and how we kind of worked to get to launches and product features and things of that nature. It was eye-opening. And it was amazing too. And I wish you could bottle that up and show it and kind of show it to everybody so there'd be a better understanding of why things can and can't be done, etc. So that it gave me some insight to, like, for instance, when I was an MVP or a Windows Insider and we were giving feedback in the feedback hub, you'd often think, well, that's a pretty easy fix, right? And so, but it wouldn't get picked up for whatever reason. Well, I learned from being on the inside, we'd often get great suggestions that people were very technically savvy about, but from the outside, it seems like an easy fix, but it's not always. That's not always the case from the inside because it impacts other parts, other things. And so when we give feedback, especially to Microsoft, because I can speak from that experience, it's not always a given that it can be implemented. And in reality, no matter how simple it is sometimes, because it's not that change impacts, there's a whole ecosystem that gets impacted by that kind of stuff. So there was an element of it being frustrating because the community sees these things once these things sorted out or feature updates, and you always can't give that. I will honestly always remember the first time I got to say we were doing an online thing with the community, and somebody asked a question about a feature or implementation of a feature, and I got to use that famous MVP line we get from the product teams at times. We've got nothing else to say about that right now. Right, that we would hear that, we hear you, but we don't have anything else right now.
Hello,
Hi, Gary.
Hey, Richard. Delighted to see Richard.
Yeah, and I thought it would be great to catch up with Richard, particularly about that transition from internal to external, or external, sorry, to
External
internal.
to internal.
Yeah. And then, so I guess, you talk about that time. So, someone like me, Gary, would say, so Richard, what about this feature? When's that coming? And you have to know.
You're not always at liberty to give all the details, right? Because some of it is internal and planning, and it impacts other teams. That blew me away because you can get a very siloed view of Microsoft sometimes, the teams, right, being in their own little tubes. But the amount of collaboration that was occurring across the board blew me away. It's something you just don't see from the outside. And so that was pretty cool, watching how features get identified, get developed, get built, and then get implemented and tested was, again, watching the sausage get made was amazing. It really was. And it raised my awareness of why, back when I was an MVP or an insider and giving feedback, why it wasn't always easy for a couple keystrokes, right, to make a change. Yeah.
And I suppose you could see the process as well. It happens when the feedback comes in.
Correct.
How that gets distributed around to the different teams.
Yep. And in my role as the community manager for the Microsoft Q&A platform, that was one of my main tasks, was to take that community feedback, synthesize it, and then give it to the team. And then the team would be able to use it to move forward from there. Sometimes it would get used to justify changes. Sometimes there just wasn't enough bandwidth to be able to implement everything. That's the other part. Yeah.
So I suppose it was an interesting time then. So does that kind of change the way that you see feedback, or you see people interacting, all the bloggers or social media and all that kind of thing, how that works with Microsoft? Yeah,
no doubt. And I was part of the greater community team that Microsoft had this V team that was every community manager and everybody who worked in community relationships and stuff like that. And I was a part of that, as well as being the specific community manager for the team. And again, you gain insight into how people kind of keep track of that stuff and use that. And again, you quickly learn not everything you get feedback on can be done. Unfortunately, it's just there's limitations. So
yeah.
And again, part of our job as a community manager was to kind of be that buffer between the community and the team. So in both directions, right?
Yeah. And so what would you say then was the most sort of surprising thing you found that, from that transitioning?
I think I have to go back to what we were saying before Garry joined us, and that is the amount of cross-team collaboration that was occurring, right? People weren't developing in a closet, right? It was out in the open across the company. And I mean, and there were still cases where even big announcements. So if it wasn't my team and they made big announcement at Build or something like that, if we had an announcement coming at Build, I knew about it. But I sat and watched Build and Ignite just like many enthusiasts do, right? I sat on my computer. All I did was log in with my Microsoft account, my work account, not my personal account. I watched the same live streams and heard some of the same breaking news that everybody else was hearing at the same time. So there are elements where you're not aware of the hardware the Surface team was working on or the feature set the Windows team was working on, unless you were running insider builds maybe. And then even for our team, developing that Q&A assist feature, we had some core teams that were aware of it, but it wasn't necessarily news across the entire company. Right. And so there was still that, but yet there was a great amount of collaboration across teams. So in that sense, it didn't seem like anybody worked in a silo. So.
Yeah. So then you made the decision to retire then. So how is that transition going back the other way now then?
Well, coming out of Microsoft, I'm not an MVP anymore. The Insider MVP program is gone. I do want to get back into tech blogging and doing my podcast that I had started before I joined Microsoft. I didn't have to lay those things aside. I chose to. When I joined Microsoft, I just chose not to have it be a thing, but I maintained the sites and all that kind of stuff. And changed my social media behavior a little bit as well, just to kind of maintain. I want to get back into doing those things. It's been just over 3 months, almost 4 months since I retired back on July 1st. So I do want to get back into those things. But as I mentioned to you, in retirement, I'm fine. And with no job per se, I'm finding there's still plenty to do that can fill up your schedule and keep you busy.
Yeah, I'm sure. So are you keeping up with sort of the insider program? Are you running insider builds?
I am running insider builds. So I did buy myself a couple of the new Copilot PCs or laptops before I left. So I got the laptop 7 edition, and I got both the 13 and the 15-inch of those. So I'm running the 15-inch on insider dev builds. I'm running on my laptop, that's running beta, and then I'm running release preview here on my main desktop. So I am running all the builds, and things update automatically in the background. I don't track those features as tightly as I used to, right? Because I would often tweet about the features or share about the features or write about the features. But right now, because I haven't gotten back into a routine of tech blogging or tech podcasting, I just haven't been keeping as much of a track of them as I used to. Yeah. For my previous job, when I was working for Penton and doing the IT Pro Today site, writing about enterprise technology, I used to track the builds. So I had a setup where I tracked the builds for the site. But yeah, I'm not as closely following them as I used to. Not right now.
It's interesting because that's one of the things me and Garry have talked about over the last couple of years. Is the way that the builds are now, and the frequency and how it's all matured and settled down. There isn't really it isn't breaking news when a build ships. But when the insider program first started, which is
everything was breaking news, right?
Yeah, it was news, wasn't it? And it was worth talking about. But I did a video of every Canary or dev build,
every new build. I remember.
Yeah, but in the last 12 months, I just stuck with the major milestones like 24H2 because there's not enough to talk about because they're so frequent with minor changes.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that's kind of how I think that was probably what they intended all along, just to kind of for it to be routine and these features get tested by people. Telemetry is the big means of feedback. So they were collecting the telemetry to know how people were using things and how they were interacting with things. But that's kind of what they probably wanted from the get-go. But back in the early days of the program, I mean, they just been 10 years, I think. October 1st, 2014 was when the first public dev builds were released, right? And so early on, it was all about what the feature was. And also, don't forget, when they decided to drop a feature from development, that was always a big headline too. suddenly it's gone, or it's, even though they were pre-release builds, nothing guaranteed. I think they fixed they're changed their messaging up a bit, so that helps a little bit with that. They've also got that new little setting where they can pace the release of different features and stuff like that. So
yeah,
some people would argue that why not give us everything all at once on insider builds, right? But I think statistically and for the telemetry, that's why they're doing it. I get it, but yeah, you're right. It has changed in these 10 years.
It's not. Yeah, it used to be a build. It was exciting. People would write about it, do videos about it. But yeah, now it's settled down. But like you said, it's probably what they want more than
what they want. Exactly.
Releases, yeah. And we were getting big changes when with Windows 10 and we had the creators update, and they were big headline things with lots of headline features.
And even now though, they dropped to one main title update a year, right? So whereas before they'd gone through that sequence where they were doing 2 a year, and so I think they probably discovered their pace, right?
Yeah. And the features aren't exactly necessarily tied to release now, and I think also it was a marketing thing, wasn't it? The creators update, or that was the one that sticks in my mind. But they were a marketing release of Windows, whereas it's just Windows now, and especially now it's Copilot, isn't it? That's the thing.
In fact,
yeah. So it's kind of been a shame that we've kind of lost that cutting edge, bleeding edge version. Running bleeding edge versions of Windows, but I suppose these builds are a lot more stable. I mean, you could use the dev and Canary channels in production without really noticing, unless you get the odd thing. It's not very often now there's a major issue with builds.
Right.
But I suppose that's the nature of software development, as Gary knows. It's you don't want the big bangs, do you? That's where the risk comes.
That's what you want to avoid anyway.
Yeah, but I do miss those days, but. Yeah, there's other things that we can talk about, and that's the other thing I was going to ask you about. What you've not been doing the blogging and stuff, but what's keeping your interest in the tech world at the moment?
So I've developed a couple new hobbies over the last few years. One of them is drones. I've gotten very interested in drones. And so I've got actually 2 DJI drones. I've got their Mini 4 Pro, fantastic camera. I mean, I took shots, this comet that's in the evening sky right now, it's getting dimmer right now. I launched that thing up to 200. I can only fly it at 200 feet at my house because I'm about 2 miles from an airport, a military airport or commercial airport. So I'm restricted on my altitude. But I caught that. The camera is so good on this drone, and it's set so nicely in the sky. I got the comet on those shots, on those big broad shots, 4K shots. I recently got their little DJI Neo, so it's a palm launched one. It's got the most horrible whine of the propellers, but it will record sound through the app.
Tiny motors.
Yeah. But it's got, you don't need a controller. It's got buttons on it to launch certain modes for it to do certain camera shots and stuff like that. So very cool. So you don't have to have a phone plugged into a controller to be able to control it, launch it, stuff like that. The other ones, like the Mini Pro 4, you have to have a controller. So I've been having fun with the drones. I want to do more with them, but I just got to go figure out the watts, what that is, right, and do some fun stuff.
Gary, you've done quite a bit with the drone, haven't you? For filming some of your podcasts.
Yeah, I've got a Mini Pro 3, which I use for a lot of my YouTube videos, for the car videos, so tracking the car cool. and things like that. So it works really well. And I mean, the Pro 4 is a lovely device.
It's amazing for a drone that's under 245 grams, right? So that keeps it in the recreational realm. You don't have to get licensed, but you do here in the U.S. anyway. I had to take a test. I had to qualify, and then the app. I actually put my plan in there, right? So I can file my plan. It's automatic approval here in the US, at least where I'm at. And so once I plug in the details of my flight, the timing, the max altitude, stuff like that, I then push a button for automatic approval, and it's done. And then, of course, because I'm in a restricted area because of my altitude of 200 feet, because recreational, you can't go above 400 anyway. But here, because I'm on the flight path to this airport, I have to acknowledge every time I launch the drone that I'm in control. I understand the rules and all that kind of stuff. But I've really enjoyed that drone because it has so many built-in cool camera shots, right? You just tell it to go do that. I've done a lot of time lapse. Time lapse are really easy with the drone, but also just the follows and the big circle. I want to get to a nice big open place to do some more of that. And then the little mini one is really for much more intimate type videos, I think. Although it would work, mostly it focuses on an individual, right? When you launch the DJI Neo, you're looking at it, it looks at your face. And so once you launch that pattern, it's going to use you as the subject. Whereas on the Mini Pro 4 or probably on the 3, you pick the object you wanted to circle. And so you can pick a car, you can pick a dog, you can pick yourself. So that's been a lot of fun. And I want to do more of that. That one they just announced is really cool looking too. Is it the DJI 3S, I think? Got 2 cameras on it, but that's a commercial. That's bigger than 249 grams. And then 3D printing. I recently decided, I saw something from Scott Hanselman on Twitter that he had shared about his entry level, what he went into 3D printing with, which is a Bamboo Lab A1 Mini. So the cube that it can print within is 180 by 180. So it's limited to what it can print. But I've been having you can see some of the filament here on my shelf. The printer sits back there on the table. I have been having a blast with that thing. I can't tell you how many things I've made to functional and non-functional, right? And then I just printed them to print them. I've printed paper towel holders. I've got a new puppy. I got a puppy last December. He just heard me say that. And I printed a thing to put his bags in and hang his leash on. So you can do some functional things. I printed a 3D moon that's based off of NASA's data for all the structures on the moon and everything, the craters, the mountains, everything. And it used that to print the 3D moon. And I bought an LED light base for it and it lights up. So I've been having fun with 3D printing, the drone stuff. And then what's the other thing? There's something, smart scopes. Have you checked out any of these smart telescopes? So these things don't have eyepieces. They connect to your phone or your tablet through an app. And they're GPS based, so you don't have to, like the old scopes, you don't have to kind of put it in place and figure out where you're at and then align all. These things are automatic. It is astrophotography for dummies, no doubt, right, because it's got a database. I want to get images of the Andromeda galaxy. You look it up in the database, it'll tell you whether it's visible or not, and if it's a good visibility, i.e. up in the overhead, or if it's closer to the horizons, and then you tell it go. And then it will track, it'll find it, it'll autofocus, and then it will just start collecting images. And of course, in astrophotography, the key to astrophotography is stacking multiple images, which basically you take a 30-second image and stack it 10 times. You've got, how's my math? 3 minutes worth of light that you've picked up, right? If you do 100, that's 30 minutes. So you actually extend the ability of the camera on the scope to collect light, and it builds the best of best of best to give you a final image. And it does it all in the scope. And then I get it dumped right to my phone or my tablet. And I've got it's amazing some of the images. I mean, it used to be stuff you'd see on magazines, right? Or online, guys who were doing this stuff. So it's been pretty amazing. So those are my 3 big new kind of hobby things.
Yeah, and I guess these are areas where you can dive into, and then once you start up, you get into the social media side involved, and you think, I could do a blog post about this, and it's where it gives you that enthusiasm, doesn't it, to teach yourself and learn stuff. I think it's the kind of thing with the 3D printing. I think if I got one, I'd really enjoy messing about with it. But I
need to learn the design piece, because I've used other people's models. There's a great online thing called Maker World that the Bamboo is connected directly to, and you can download the profiles, bring them onto your printer, and then adjust them. Some of them are already adjusted for the size of the A1 Mini, but it allows you to. I made myself a pegboard for my storage office, And then I 3D printed containers and holders and things to hold different things in there. I mean, it's practically unlimited what you could do with it. Like I said, I've printed some throwaway stuff. I printed some stuff just for the heck of printing it and see how it would work and how it looks. And I've printed some very functional stuff, even stuff for my daughter. I printed my daughter a couple of paper towel holders.
I think the best thing I ever printed was clips for the baseboard of our kitchen, which had gone out of production. So
they're so hard to get hold of. Yeah.
And I actually used a 3D scanner to scan the one existing one which hadn't broken, and then printed it. 3D scanners are great fun.
Yeah, one of the things I printed was, so this guy used a 3D camera to scan a Xbox controller, and then he made this, and it's hollow. It's really light, but it fits
lovely
like a glove. And I've printed myself a stand for my tablet, a stand for my phone, a stand for my gaming device. So you can just about, and my bedside table, I've printed things to hold my glasses, to hold my remote controls, to hold my phone. So yeah, do I need those things? No. Was it fun and cool to print them and see all that come together? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. And I think at first it's a novelty, isn't it? But then once you start getting to do for useful stuff and little bit, it's like the Garry's example, little bits of things that would be hard to get anywhere else because they're a specialist item. I think it's fun for that. It's useful for that type of thing.
Yep. So it's been fun to explore these other areas, these other things, and I'll always be doing my geek stuff, my computer stuff and things like that. Although my last computer I actually bought a pre-built. I decided not to build it. By the time I compared all the things, I just decided to go with a pre-built machine. And it's great. I mean, it's a great gaming device and then just a general work device. And then my other is my 49-inch monitors. I've got the big curved Samsung 49-inch monitors. I got one here and I got one over on my desk that used to be my workstation for work, but now it's my testing station. So
yeah. Well, I think it's great that you've got the time now to get into these things. Like you said earlier on, you've worked for 40 odd years, so why not have a bit of time to follow your passions and enjoy the technology? And I think being interested in in any technology, I think it's that constant change and constant drive. So it's stuff that keeps you going, isn't it? So you're always looking for something new and
this A1 Mini, the printer's $199. That's a great entry level price for 3D printing, and you don't need to have the AMS, what holds 4 reels of filament. You can actually hang a single filament roll, and it will prompt you to change the rolls if you're printing multicolor and stuff like that. So you don't have to go beyond $200 to get started with that device. But I actually went with the deal. The deal included the AMS, which automatically feeds the filaments to the print head. And so it manages and takes care of it and does all that stuff. So it's a great little device. I'm quite blown away by it.
Is it something that takes a lot of sort of maintenance and managing and cleaning?
Not a tremendous amount, no. I mean, I've had to grease or oil the tracks, the X and Y axis tracks a couple times because it will tell me after so many hours of printing, hey, it's time to oil the 2 tracks, the XY axis. I've got the oil and a little spreader thing, and you put it on there and you push the stuff back and forth, and that's the only maintenance it is required.
Wow, that's brilliant. Yeah. So it sounds like you're enjoying your retirement and keeping busy.
Yeah, no doubt. I do want to get back to. I need to start taking all these experiences and blogging about them, podcasting about them, and getting back to that. But I got plenty to do.
That's what we need. We need the Richard Hay podcast back. Okay. And to talk about some of this stuff.
Faith, Tech, and Space had gotten to 20 episodes before I got hired and like I was telling you earlier, Microsoft didn't tell me I couldn't blog, couldn't podcast. In fact, a lot of folks at Microsoft do blog and podcast because it gives them metrics, right? It gives them engagement numbers. And we probably would have gotten there in my role as community manager to eventually get to something like that. But it's just something I enjoy, right? I enjoy that to share and talk about the technology stuff. And there's so much about technology these days. I mean, I just installed my first mesh Wi-Fi system. So that's been a whole learning experience. And figuring out how that matches and how it does. And of course, I'm big into IoT. I do a lot of home automation. So I do that kind of stuff as well. So yeah, there's plenty to blog about. It's just a matter of sitting down and blogging. I got to get off of Fortnite. I'll be honest. I play Fortnite 3 or 4 times a week with my grandson who lives in Italy. It allows us to connect and talk. I help him with his English. He's learning English in school. He'll be 10 this year. So I help him practice his English as we're playing the game, which is a great excuse to get online and play a little bit of Fortnite.
Yeah, excellent. Well, it's been brilliant to catch up with you.
No doubt.
Again. I really do appreciate you taking your time from your busy retirement schedule to join us. And if anyone wants to get in touch or follow you, are you still keeping your social medias going?
I do, yeah. I'm on Twitter /X, whatever you want to call it. So I'm at WinOBS. I'm at WinOBS almost any platform I'm on. So I'm also over on Blue Sky. I think I'm also doing Threads. But I still share a lot of links. In fact, on my winobs.com website, my constantly curated link RSS feed of links that I share via my social media from all that I read about 120 RSS feeds still each day. And so I still share content out through my Twitter account. And then on winobs.com, that feed is there. So you can actually see the stuff I'm sharing on Twitter. I do that through Buffer. I use Buffer for that. I was an early adopter and they still give me 50% off the pro service. So.
Well, excellent. We really enjoyed catching up with you. And when you get some of these shows going or your blogs going, you can come back on and tell us all about them.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks, Richard. It was great to catch up.
Thanks, fellas. A good catch up.
Thanks to Garry. We'll be back same time, same place next week. You can email me in@thislifestyle.com. See you on the next show.